As most of the world is sheltering in space, spending a lot more time indoors, and consuming copious amounts of content online, how can the show go on? Artists and cultural practitioners have found a solution to this dilemma in the form of digital exhibitions and showcases. Digital exhibitions are all the rage, and they can take on various forms. Some digital exhibitions recreate the space of a museum or a gallery online, allowing users to explore the hallways and artworks virtually and from the comforts of their own home. Others lean into the possibilities afforded by the webpage itself, using it as a blank canvas to create interactive works that are meant to be encountered via the screen. In this episode, we're diving headfirst into our digitally saturated reality. Whilst some artists and cultural practitioners scrambled to adapt their projects for the online space, Tulika, Ahuja, Reza, Hasni, and Siah or Siah were well prepared. Reza's solo digital exhibition, titled Center for Altered Togetherness, or Cat World for short, was launched amidst the circuit breaker or lockdown period.
Everybody's molded to do this thing and this thing in society, so it's for once like you don't really have to do whatever that you're supposed to do, but just be yourself, and then just explore the whole thing, and then like have this feeling of like wanting to explore, or you can even choose that you want to fly or whatever, do whatever. You can even stay there for like 7 hours. Nobody's gonna tell that, oh, your time's up. Yeah, and then you have to log out,
or that you have 1 or 2 lives, it was really just about the journey, and that's why it was important that this was launched during the circuit breaker, when everyone was feeling very stuck and very like attached to one place, but also their mind was traveling so many places. So we wanted to like go in there in the mind a little bit.
It's like your safe space or Shangri-La in your mind, Yeah.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Mushroomed, a podcast hosted by the Singapore-based online platform Object Lesson Space. Object Lesson Space is an art historical archive and platform that documents conversations with artists, writers, and curators. My name is Joella. I'm the founding editor of the platform and your host for this podcast. Cat World is quite an experience and can be accessed online at www.c-a-t.world. The homepage of the exhibition presents users with a choice. Users may pick out any 2 colors to form their own unique avatar, and these colors can be selected from a color wheel or using specific RGB, hex, or HSL codes. Once you click on the button that says Go, you're immediately transported into a portal-like tunnel. At the end of the tunnel, a bright open space flashes, beckoning the user to travel towards it. A straight pathway lies between where the user is and the light at the end of the tunnel. Flanked on either side of this pathway are symbols and motifs that change every time you enter the website. Some of the images you might see include columns with spinning stars at the top that move up and down, angular building blocks, steps that lead to nowhere, and human figures that resemble mannequins. The way in which these features are arranged on either side of the pathway recalled for me these large and ceremonial architectural arches. You can navigate through the virtual realm using the keys W, A, S, and D, a function that users who game would be familiar with. At the end of the tunnel, users arrive at Mid-Earth. Mid-Earth is laid out in the form of a map that users can move around and explore. From there, users can visit 6 other virtual worlds: Mother Earth, Fantasy, Lost Harmony 1, Lost Harmony 2, Soul Searching, and Yin Yang. Across all 6 worlds, users are shown slogans such as "Explore Beyond the Walls" or "Don't Look Back." The overall color palette is vibrant and shapes are constantly moving, either up or down, spinning, or left to right. A couple of recurring symbols include architectural elements such as mazes, planetary objects, and mannequin-like human figures. To put it simply, the experience is a visual whirlwind and provides a unique take on the notion of a digital exhibition. This episode takes the form of an interview with Reza, Tulika, and Siah, and throughout the course of our conversation, we managed to chat about topics such as our relationship to the digital and the imaginative possibilities of the internet. I wanted to begin our conversation by taking some time to speak to the networks that we find ourselves embedded within. And this is a question that I'd like to pose to all three of you. What would you say your earliest or most formative experience with art was? And maybe we can start with Reza, since I'm going by the order I see the video call in.
Okay, my first experience was probably in art school because I was taking experimental drawings and I was doing graphic design, but I also have other classes like experimental drawings and figure drawing and stuff like that. So that's when a point I know that which direction I want to go to. Like, not really interested in going to like advertising, so I was more into creating my own body of artwork. So at that time I was creating a lot of experimental like drawings and stuff on my own. And only after school I started venturing more into like animation and stuff like that. And that's when I got inspired by like the 1900s like surreal artists, more the stop motion artwork collage Dadaist movement. So that's when I realized that which direction I want to go, and I only started like this showcasing my works that I did like last 6 years ago. And that's when I actually have my voice of like translating like which sort of artist I want to be, or what kind of like works that I want to showcase to other people. Yeah.
And it's so interesting you talk about like surrealist artists as well, because there's a huge you can really see a huge element of that within like your work, and particularly the exhibition that we're focusing on as well. I was wondering if there were particular particular people whose work you gravitate towards, or if it was more of the ideals of the movement itself that you gravitate towards.
More of the movement and of the whole entire that I gravitate towards too, because like and that day and age they're going against the other side of the fine art, they are more experimental in a sort of way. Like in this day and age, like internet comes in and stuff like that, and then like probably like painters and stuff like they don't see me as an artist because we're crossover the digital world already. So we're in a borderline whereby we're in smack in the middle of like the art world and the commercial digital world. So I mean, I like the concept of it, but if you ask me about artists that I'm inspired by that movement, I'll be like Suzanne Pitt. I was one of them, and like Salvador Dali, or those like Dadaist artists thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And on that note about counterculture, I guess it'd be good to hear from Tulika as well, like as to what your experiences, especially something that you found particularly formative in terms of art and guess even just experiencing or encountering it. And maybe also whether or not that was something that came into the conceptualization or putting together of Mama Magnet as well.
Ooh, it's a huge question to answer, but I mean, I guess because we were talking about surrealism, Jodorowsky was a huge influence for all three of us. I think we bonded over the scenes from Holy Mountain. For those who are not familiar, Jodorowsky is a surrealist Chilean filmmaker. He's one of those like cult filmmakers from got really big in the 70s and the 80s, and then he tried to make Dune. He storyboarded it for like many years, and then it never happened, and then he made Holy Mountain, and yeah, he has like a crazy iconography, and he's still alive and still making work. So we kept like going back to images of his sets, like his film sets, that he reproduced in the 80s. So we were like, of course this can be done digitally, and like how can we put our own spin to it, like taking some of those concepts. How Your second question was how Mama Magnet, like if this influenced Mama Magnet in any way. I guess another big one of my formative experiences with art came through my work at Cult Gallery, where I was a curator. We were the pace of work and the pace of churning out new ideas was so quick over those 3 years. Like you had to always, like, you would do like 5 to 6 exhibitions a year, whether it's for clients or whether it's for the gallery. And some of those ideas I think were very personal, but because you had to churn them out so quickly, it was kind of like, okay, on to the next thing, okay, on to the next thing. So for Mama Magnet, it was really like, how can I preserve some of those ideas and leave room to build on them later if it feels like it's still relevant. So the idea for starting Mama Magnet was really just an archive, like an internet archive of public programming, counterculture public programming, whether it's curated by me, whether it's curated by people in the community, like-minded people. And then from there, I think someone asked me the question, do you see Mama Magnet as a, and at this point it didn't even have the name Mama Magnet, but somebody asked me, do you see it as a project or do you see it as a company? And then I was like, that's a really good question. I guess I'm trying to do too many things again by also trying to start a company and then doing this archive thing at the side. So then I was like, I think they both have to be the same thing. And then that's how it came about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting that, it's almost put at odds with each other, this idea of a company versus an archive. And maybe we can come on to this later as well, but it'd be really good to hear as to how that journey has been for yourself and how, throughout the whole entire process of working on the company / project and also working on the exhibition, how that has come like to, I guess, fruition in some way, or whether that has been refined as well for you. I'd also like to pose this, the same question that, Reza and Tulika have been speaking to Siah. And I was wondering if you could spend some time maybe like talking us through an experience that, comes to mind for you when you think of something that was formative or a really early experience with art.
Well, so I went to art school here. I went to LaSalle College, and so we had this module called contextual and contemporary studies, if I remember correctly. And through that, and of course through the coursework, I was introduced to like ideas like culture jamming. So I'm not sure whether you're familiar with yeah. So this sort of like, we were talking about counterculture earlier, and these are people who would go around. They would hijack billboards and just put like basically anti-authority messages up on billboards. So they were like, just subvert all these messages. And of course, I was introduced to ideas like psychogeography, and we were talking. So Reza was talking about the Dadaist and the surrealists informing his work, and similarly, these ideas were, so I came by the way of the whole how do you relate to an urban landscape, and like even the vernacular visuals that you see in particular cities and so on, like how that gets subverted, and how that is sort of like even a medium in itself, right? So, and I think what attracted me to all these topics more than design, like like the branding and all those like very official ways of looking at it, is just that there's this idea of wit, and there's this idea of like subverting something, like you get to have fun with it, and also you can sort of like stick it to the man kind of thing. So that was sort of like the formative ideas in art school that I sort of like latched on to, and I did my own research, and also I eventually did my BA thesis in as well. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the thing I'm coming from lah.
And this idea of like sticking it to the man, I think like if there was any like if there's any kind of way or like platform for doing so, I think the internet allows for that in a way that
Definitely.
I guess perhaps maybe quote unquote more traditional forms of art like painting or
Correct.
sculpture perhaps have to shed more baggage in order to kind of have that wit or humor embodied in them. And I wanted
Definitely, yeah.
to, like take this opportunity to also speak to how this collaboration came to be. And also, I guess, given the context of, it going live during the circuit breaker or lockdown period in Singapore, whether or not, the project took on different nuances as a result of, the shift in how we began to relate to the digital.
So the collaboration came about, and feel free to jump in here. It came about because Reza lives in Berlin and he got stuck in Singapore. I guess stuck is not the right word because it turned out to be a blessing. But he was in Singapore because of the pandemic. He was back here and he couldn't go back to Berlin. And I really wanted to do a show with him, but I was like, maybe I should wait till I've like found my footing a little bit. Because I was a little bit like nervous to ask him like, hey, do you want to do a show? But the pandemic happened, and like one thing led to another, and I was just like, hey, would you like to do a show? Maybe we have to do it online. And he was like, yes, okay. And then we figured we need a collaborator who knows the media really well. And then enter Siah. We reached out to him through Instagram. I had been following Siah's work from a couple of years ago because he's an illustrator. Like I knew him as an illustrator first, which is a really long time ago, but only through Instagram. And then sometime last year, his Instagram feed started getting very interesting with like a lot of web-based stuff. So I just messaged him, and then he is a fan of Reza's work as well. So he was like, yes, I'm down to collaborate. And then the three of us just hit it off, and everything happened completely virtually.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, we met after the show concluded, right? For the first time. But I think we were talking about whether like this. So for me, this show is sort of like it became a conscious response to the lockdown situation, in the sense that like I think at that time a lot of people were just scrambling to bring physical things online, but they saw it as sort of like like how do we make this same thing happen online. But I remember bringing like I kept bringing into this discussion that like now we are doing it on the web. Like there are actually things that are possible on the web that is not possible offline, and I sort of threw in some ideas there as well. So I think that is really sort of like the focus of my practice now, where um, I see the web as this sort of like asynchronous medium. Like how you can leave a message, and the person and another person can see this message at their own time. Like it's not like a real time communication kind of situation. Like I mean, let's say emails or like Facebook comment threads, that kind of thing. But at the same time, real time communication is also possible, and that's how we came up with the idea of we subvert the idea of an online exhibition where you are experiencing that thing alone, and you don't you don't get to see other participants or even interact with the artists. Whereas for our case, we're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if you can see other participants and interact with them while looking at the work and so on. So I remember us having that kind of conversation as well.
At that time, we were also going into lockdown. So I remember Reza and I met just before the circuit breaker hit. And at that time, there was the rule that only 10 people can meet. So we were asking ourselves questions like, can we have more than 10 people gather on the internet? And then like it was obviously a response to living to first the fear of like going into lockdown, and then after that, while being in lockdown, that's when all the creation happened, and even Reza's artwork was a response to all of that.
There's also something that I suppose I really wanted to talk more about, particularly this idea of a digital exhibition and because there's so many ways this could go, right? There are people who've done an exact recreation of a museum hallway, for example, onto like the webpage. So what you do is that you can just wander these hallways just from the comforts of your home, which is obviously a very straightforward way of thinking about this, and I suppose in many ways also rather unimaginative. And I also wanted to talk about, I guess, the sort of relationship you guys share with the internet and how the digital space has been something that, you know, has been a productive grounds for, I guess, thinking, making, producing, and how you would describe your relationship with the internet.
The internet for me is like like it's it's more of like collaboration. Like it's made possible as well because you don't really need to be physically on another place to work together or something. We can just do everything online, and can even like we don't really need to have a physical space as well, because everything could be translated and then do it online. It's just that there's a blurred line whereby we just need to figure out a way how to have this experiential thing, like in physical world you have the experience and stuff like that, so we need to bring that same feeling into the virtual world as well. So that's very challenging, but it's exciting as well, because there's a lot of like new ways of new possibilities that you can actually do with the internet, and that's shown in most of our practice as well, like how we try to collaborate with other artists and other people who are doing other cool stuff online that can bring a totally different experience for the people who are going online and seeing your works and stuff like that. Yeah.
Did your relationship with the internet change before and after Cat World?
Before that, I've only seen it in a way of like like finding an inspiration and stuff like that, or talking to other artists, and then or learning practices and stuff like that. But then I realized after this COVID is actually it's a blessing in disguise for me. And I realized that that there's a new way of showcasing like a gallery kind of space, but you bring the people into this environment of the world that you created, and then they get to experience it, like how they like escapists from the real world, or relearning whatever relearning back the relearning back the experiences that you have in the real world but online virtually.
I think like for many of us, we grew up as users of the internet. Like I remember like really like just babies on the internet, like with all of these different games and all these different sites. I guess I was wondering if, you know, for example, like for Siah yourself, like as somebody who works a lot with also the back end of things, has that relationship changed from like a user to also somebody who kind of sees the more back end of things as well?
Yeah, so I think the internet is so many things to all of us, and I think in our maybe childhood or teenagehood, depending on how old you are, like you had things like Neopets and GeoCities and Angel Fire, you know, like sort of like the era where everyone just discovered this amazing new connector, right? And then you just want to put everything up there and so on. And then you sort of see that evolution to these days we have sort of like siloed places to hang out, so to speak. Like you have Instagram, you have Zoom, and so on. But also I think for me, because also due to my personal like curiosity towards things. So from a very early stage, I sort of like meddled with, you know, like HTML, like how to customize your Friendster profile, that kind of thing. And from that point, and then I start to learn all these things about the backend and all that stuff. And I think the internet is just this huge technology. So my favorite analogy, right, to talk about the internet is when people first had the movable press, you know, like Gutenberg press. And back then, like the press really disrupted the so-called like the economy back then, because you had these scribes copying out the books, right, like the religious books, and those sold for really high prices because they were like manual. And then you had this press which introduced mass production to information. And so if we take that frame of mind, that context, and you apply it to us, like when the internet came out, it made a lot of uh, exclusivity or like scarcity disappear. So I think to me that the internet is sort of like this feeling that I always relate to. And also, of course, because I work so much with the technologies that are related to the internet, um, I yeah, so it's sort of like this Lego set that I know how to play with. And then when people come to me like, hey, actually you can put it like this way, and then we can do this, and then they'll be like, what? Yeah, so to me the internet is this thing, lor. In fact, so I'm not sure whether you guys are even familiar with this science fiction author called Robin Sloan. So he wrote this book called Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore. So actually, Robin Sloan, right? He calls himself a media inventor, and of course, he's one of my idols. And I read the book, and he also had this. He writes a lot of speculative science fiction, but he also created this app in the early days of app making, when like if you can make an iPhone app, people think, wow, like wow, you're like God, like you can do this, you know. So he created an essay, but he put it inside an app, and the app was called Fish, if I remember correctly. And basically, he was talking about how these boundaries are dissolving and new boundaries are forming. And by way of the medium is the message, right? Like, of course, the book is an iPhone app, which took some sort of like wrapping your head around kind of thing. So yeah, so for me, I think Robin Sloan is really like my, how to say, my guiding star, or like one of my references lah, like of how the internet as a medium or as a practice is, of course, it's a valid like creative medium, and also you can have a practice on the internet, but also it's so many more things to different people. So and I get very excited when I talk about it lah. So yeah, correct.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, can completely hear the excitement. And I was
Yeah.
also wanting to ask Tulika as well, like, what would you say a relationship with the internet is? And I guess also just to throw it in there, like whether or not, that has also changed with like the really real advent of like social media and how that has overtaken in many ways the way in which we consume content.
I think my relationship with the internet before social media was very functional or like entertainment based, but I think as a curator in my work, Instagram is very important. It's how it's how I keep up with artists, and it's how I talk to them, communicate with them, connect with them, but also like see what's happening in the world in a way, in a visual, with a visual lens, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess also just to turn the conversation to Cat World in particular, I think I wanted to, I guess, talk to the world building that went on in the process of making the exhibition. And I suppose like a good way of describing how I felt like just exploring it was really strange, disembodied, and also yet like really like drawn in by the sort of colors and the artworks that were being displayed. I wanted to, I guess, maybe spend some time talking to particularly Reza, and how you approach the process of conceptualizing these worlds, because they all have a very distinct quality, or even like personality and way in which you navigate around them as well.
The way I built this world is I was thinking of when COVID and the pandemic started. It's like everybody's saying that we're restricted to go, you can't go in, and like that they can't group together in like 5 people or 10 people, and everybody's complaining about it, or they can't go to certain places, or they can't travel. So the way I do it, whereby I decided to set it really free. It's like a boundless, whereby by gravity or whatever, you can fly, you can do anything that you want inside there. So there's a absolute freedom to roam about inside there. There's this part of me whereby I also want to include, there's a lot of like other things around the internet, so I want to gather, or I want to collect all this like collages of like good things, or things that everyday people do, or to learn about something about themselves inwards and outwards as well. So I collect, like I have the nature, like you can't do certain things around like on the physical world now, but actually you can just go into this online and then have a open mindset and positive view, and then you could actually go to, like, example, like one of the worlds is like nature, and explore and have this exploration kind of mode or feeling uh, for them to go around. And then there's also other places whereby there's social worlds or personal worlds as well. For personal worlds, for you to feel to know, to just wander around, and then to have like self thought, and like think about like where you want to go, or what you want to do on a day, or be, or yeah. Or the social work can even like chat to other people as well inside there, whereby to just say hello or just greetings, because some people are just for quarantine alone at home, and then they feel a bit lonely. So probably like you can't see another person physically on the physical world, but online you could actually like see some people moving around as well.
Yeah, like some form of digital intimacy in some way
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
right?
It's like uploading your consciousness. It's like uploading your consciousness and trying to live and try to bring everything good in the physical world into this like online like virtual world. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like a huge part I was also struck by is like the different layers to I guess not just the worlds, but also in particular to the sort of works that were being shown as well. I think it really is like probably encapsulated by the name of one of the worlds in terms of like yin and yang. And I wanted to spend some time maybe like getting your thoughts on how, I guess, dualities, or like the relationship between two different not ends of the stick, but two different entities inform the way in which you approach your work, and whether or not, like it's something that is constantly like, it's more of like a philosophy for yourself, or it's something that you are very interested in exploring, particularly for this cat world project.
It's a very personal thing as well. Like the dualities can also be part of this, like in like cat world as well. Like whatever that you go inside this virtual world is actually to relearn back about your physical world as well. You forget, sometimes physical world you just tend to take things for granted, and then you forget about certain things. So in this virtual world, they're actually reteaching whatever that you have already experienced in the physical world. It's just the reminding yourself like, hey, you can actually do this and do that. So, and I believe also that's like balance is really important as well. It's that's there's always have to be good and bad, and then you have to balance it out together, because it cannot be all good. Like nobody is like 100% angel, right? So you just need to have like a bit of like maybe a bit percentage of of of, of faults somewhere, but that makes you a bit more humanized. So that's when like the good and the bad will always try to balance it out one another, because you can't be either like horribly 100% bad or 100% good, right?
I was also really struck by the similarities between the exhibition and kind of like a computer game of sorts. Like, I was very struck by the way in which it referenced or leaned upon a lot in certain ways, like I guess, visual language, or like the ways in which you would navigate through all of these games with like world maps, portals, like spaces you would come back to and then can travel in and out of, and then the ways in which, you know, we could use the keys to navigate around the space as well. I mean, obviously, like I wanted to also speak to the point of world building as a game design function almost, but also like how that was how did that collaborative process between Reza and Siah kind of work out? Like how did these conversations feed into one another such that, you know, the illustration informed the interactive design and vice versa? Like how was that feedback look like for you guys, and how was that collaboration something that, you know, you guys approached as well?
Yeah, so I remember when Tulika and Reza first approached me with this project, I'm like, wait a minute, like, because, as someone who has always played computer games, if you know Minecraft or like even like older like Super Nintendo, like Harvest Moon farming simulation, that kind of thing. I've always been a gamer, and so when I had all these ideas, when I saw Reza's work and it's so rich in symbolism, like um, you have very visual depictions of like inner minds, and also auras, or even like emotions visualized. And if you think about it, you don't really have a lot of video games that talk about these things. Video games are always full of action, and like you always have a goal, you always have to be somewhere. So I thought, oh, okay, it's interesting that now I can actually build a so-called game, or like an experience where people can really just focus on these things that Reza's artwork is talking about. And also by adding that interactive layer, like, I mean, you hit it spot on that it really does function sort of like a video game, with the idea that there are, like, you're sort of trying to map a physical location digitally. Like you have the open field where you can travel to different portals, and then in the various portals you have something, like some things you can do. So yeah, so all that are really like informed by video games, but sort of with sort of reference back to Reza's message, essentially, with his art. Yeah.
Yeah, Reza, how was the process of like thinking about the artwork turning in almost into like a game-like experience for yourself?
It was interesting for me because first time I was working with Siah, and we're just discussing how to how, like, on a normal gaming thing, whereby like Siah was talking about how this world becomes like a game as well sometimes. It's like everybody trying to gain like extra brownie points for this and that to get access to another world, or get access to something a bit more higher or something like that. So, but we want to do something a bit more like a much more free or much more open kind of concept, whereby maybe it's like even we initially have thought like maybe you could actually send vibrations up from the crystals and stuff like that. Like probably like even like the human doesn't need to be human anymore. Maybe we can actually change it into like minerals or crystals, like those energy kind of things. So it was quite interesting because we don't really necessarily think like what we want in the physical world to be in this virtual world, because I was telling that we could be like, we can just construct this world to be whatever that we want. Yeah.
Yeah, there's such a spiritual element to this that I'm getting also from our conversation. And I think like it replicates in some way like my experience of like going through the exhibition, and also feeling like that, because I guess when you encounter like a digital landscape such as this, your thought process often is to gravitate towards, okay, what's the quest here, what do I have to do in order to unlock like this, is this a box that I have to jump on in order for something to pop up, and then like, you know, there's like a jack in the box idea where, you know, there's a surprise at the end of it. But it was a lot of searching and a lot of exploring and a lot of navigating. And I was wondering, like, you know, the role of that whole entire process of, I guess, existing in this in between space of looking, to the whole entire process of thinking about the user's experience within the exhibition itself. How was that? Was that something that, you know, was kept at the forefront of your mind, or was that something that came kind of like, it just so happened that that was something that followed on from the list of things that you guys were looking at doing?
It's more like limitless kind of feel, where we don't even want people to be so like everybody's molded to do this thing and this thing in society. So it's for once like you don't really have to do whatever that you're supposed to tell to do, but just be yourself, and then just explore the whole thing, and then like have this feeling of like wanting to explore, or or you can even choose that you want to fly or whatever, do whatever. You can even stay there for like 7 hours. Nobody's gonna tell that, oh, your time's up. Yeah, and then you have to log out,
Or
but
that you have one or two lives, you know, like it was
Yeah.
really just about the journey. That's why it was important that this was launched during the circuit breaker, when everyone was feeling very stuck and very very like attached to one place, but also their mind was traveling so many places. So we wanted to like go in there a little, in the mind a little bit.
It's like your safe space or Shangri-La in your mind. Yeah.
yeah, I think what struck me during the process of the creation of this project is just that how the three of us were so aligned in terms of the so-called emotional impact we wanted the project to have on the visitor. Because I think not everyone can like the idea of a meditative space, especially digitally, is not something that immediately clicks with everyone. But funnily enough, the three of us were just I don't think we even talked about it. It's just that we were there ready when we started the project, that we were thinking about this digital meditation kind of world that we wanted to build.
Yeah, like everybody's vibes seem to just line up, like really like
Correct.
just aligning.
Yeah, it was very, very easy
Yeah.
to just like get on the same page and, oh, what can we like be playful about, or what can we do that's interesting for the visitor. uh, so earlier Reza was saying, you have public spaces, but social spaces, and you also have personal worlds inside of the space. So in fact, if you went to some of the portals, even though someone else is in the same portal at the same time as you wouldn't be able to see them, because that space is meant to be like meditative. So these are the, like, small so-called Easter eggs or functions that we built into the experience.
Yeah. And also think really interesting point of the exhibition is the chat box function, which the avatar plus the chat box function, which reminded me so much of Habbo Hotel, which like is a game from, I would assume, the 2000s, where everybody had a little avatar and we can just inhabit different worlds, party with one another, talk to one another, and dress our own avatars up. I was wondering like how the chat box was something that you all hoped, how you saw it functioning in the context of the exhibition, and what you all hoped it would add to the experience of being within this space, especially with, you know, these formations of digital connections that we've also been spending some time talking about within the context of the circuit breaker, and within the context of the fact that some people might feel particularly lonely or left out in being so isolated.
It's more of human touch actually on the digital world. Like we've initially thought of putting like vibrations out, like good vibrations out, but we thought maybe chat would be function would be really good, because if you just do vibration, then it couldn't really interact with other people. So it's humanize the whole space a bit sometimes. Yeah. So hopefully that helps with some people who are going in there, Yeah.
It allows you to put a bit of your personality in it as well. At first we were thinking that the chat function should be emoji, and then we figured maybe it's better to just if they want to use emoji, sure, then they will know how to copy paste and put it in. But the main point is just being able to connect with strangers online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I've played Have a Hotel before. So and other games where you can talk to each other. And I think if you were a part of this experience when it first came out, right? Like real-time communication that is sort of attached to your little avatars. The first time you experience it, it's like, oh, I can't believe I'm talking to this person from the other side of the world, and you guys can go on quests together, or like you guys can just talk about like random things, and for me personally, like even those kind of communication eventually, like they grew into like offline friendships as well. So for me, it's very straightforward that when we wanted to build this world, I think just having people be able to see each other is not enough. um yeah, so the whole idea of going to an art exhibition as well is that you can talk about it with your friends. So if you go to the museum or the gallery with your friend, you would be able to, the experience of looking at the artwork and even considering the artwork is different when you have a friend with you versus like it's a solo journey, right? So I think for me that was that bit where to make it a true shared experience, you do need to be able to speak about it like as you are experiencing it. So I was sort of like tapping on that
Yeah.
uh yeah, sense of immediacy as well lah.
Are also, I guess, coming on to the exhibition, I was wondering if, because it's so unique in its execution and conceptualization, I did feel like sometimes like the term digital exhibition didn't really cut it in terms of describing the project and what it set out to achieve. And I was wondering, Tulika, from your point of view, whether there were particular things that within the context of perhaps physical exhibitions that you were hoping to, I guess, really lean into and maybe not so much recreate, but more of amplify in the context of a digital space, whether that be, the connection you feel with interacting with an artwork, the connection that you have with other people seeing an artwork together, or whether this was something that, was very unique in terms of like its conceptualization, and maybe the term exhibition itself might also be rather limiting in describing the fact that this project went above and beyond um, mere like showcase of artworks, I suppose.
Oh, that's a great question. I think that we weren't trying to mimic the physical world at all. We were just trying to see what boundaries we could push with the digital space. And it was the first time for all three of us. So personally, I went in with the intention of bringing Reza's art to people and and getting seeing Reza's potential to create these worlds so that people could live in these worlds. And when we went to Siah with this idea, we weren't imagining what it turned out to be. We were just imagining his art in a digital space, maybe like very flat layered, like you go in a bit, but not so much. And then it was Siah who was like, because of his background with gaming, etc., etc., he was like, no, I think people can really like walk through his worlds. We need to do that. And we were like, okay, cool. So then it kind of just built on from there. We weren't trying to mimic the physical space at all. But I guess what we were trying to do was to make art and more spirituality or unseen energies more accessible and more relatable, especially when everyone was experiencing them alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the site came under an attack on the day that it launched as well. And I was wondering if this was something that we could spend some time talking about, particularly with regard to how was everybody feeling about that whole entire experience? That because I think it caught everyone by surprise that it even happened in the first place, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
correct, yeah.
Yeah, it was surprising. It was a little bit like disembodying. I'm going to reuse the word that you used. This was disembodying for us. But then in a couple of hours, it was like chill. Like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? You know, like, okay, cool. We'll just fix it and then it'll be fine. But I think Siah felt the pressure most amongst all of us.
Well, I think what was interesting for me is how you guys fed off the fact that the site was under attack. So I remember Reza did a couple of response pieces
Yes.
in response to how when the site was under an attack. So what really happened was so it's called a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service. So this is gonna get a bit boring, but feel free to cut it out. But so what happens is that there are these spam bots that keep sending requests to our servers, and they do so at such a large volume that legitimate users are not able to access the website. And what that sort of appears to us is that like the world loads so slowly that things get out of order, and then you had different worlds clashing into each other as a result of the attack. And when I felt the pressure to fix it, but also at the same time I was like, wow, Reza really like chill, right, like all the way, because he just did like a response piece to that. I think it was just really cool that we are not just not just we are really open-minded about it. Like it's we are really not trying to be trying to be in control about the whole experience, other than how we have already set it up to be. So I think that also fits into the whole world building idea, where you create this space for the experience to happen, but you don't create the experience, because the experience is for the visitor to create for themselves. So I think that was my takeaway from the DDoS, that or even like just the idea of entropy or like accidents informing the work. So I guess that speaks to the Dadaist part of it as well.
How are you so chill about it, Reza? Like, like worlds colliding into one another.
I was just having a friend was telling me that, hey, it's like the worlds are colliding. Is it something wrong? And then I was looking at it, I was like, hey, it actually looks pretty alright. Then it's like the real world. It looks like the real world itself as well. Like some days you have like some days are good, some days are bad. But eventually, like this virtual world is also the same thing, that you can't control so much things. So you just have to experience it, and then if it's the attack is going on, you can just enjoy the experimental works that's been mixed and matched, and then you can screen capture it or whatever, and then after it can come back again, and it's a different world. So it's like this keeps on refreshing. So which is why I was like quite relaxed about it. I was like, see, I said, take your time. It's like it's okay for me. It's okay clashing like that, Yeah.
Yeah, like for sure, presenting work on the internet, we knew that there's a lot of unknowns out there that we're really opening ourselves up to. Of course, we didn't know the extent of it. Now we do. But the fact that, like Siah said, the fact that we were open to it, I think with Cat World, the journey was really important to us, because so much happened even while we were building this virtual world. Like literally our physical world was in chaos, and our work was a response to that. And then the journey kind of continued. Like on the opening day, people came in from different parts of the world. People were chatting, interacting. People were selecting different colored avatars. They were exploring worlds. So there were so many unknowns. And then the spam bots came. The attack happened. We took the site down for a while, and then it got back up again. And this media covered it, and then these people talking about it. So it was kind of like alive all the time. And we just accepted that fact about the internet as a medium. I think that's why we were so chill.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it opens up like these possibilities. It also like just creates a whole entire new thing that perhaps wouldn't have been otherwise possible as well.
Actually, it's interesting that you say that, because between Reza and Siah, the way they were riffing off each other was Reza was like constructing, Siah was deconstructing and constructing again. And then when these spam bots came in, they deconstructed it further, to which we constructed it again. So it was like a ping pong of energies throughout, and maybe it still is, you know, like the show is still on. Who knows what can happen again?
Even the entrance to the show, when you come to the website, you're going through this tunnel, right? And even that tunnel, if you can come to it a different time, it looks different because the elements that make up the tunnel are randomized. So we actually have different, I think like 12 different components that every time you come in, it will just be a different combination of things. So it looks different to everyone, to everyone who comes to the show at the same time. So yeah, so I think that is already the idea behind the show, and it just further, it's just another thing we could riff on when the attack happened. Yeah,
I think like
that was amazing. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was what, Siah's first DDoS attack, right, in your house?
Yes,
Generally,
I
yeah.
think so, in my whole career of building very boring websites, but yes, this is the first one,
It's like
which
the
is great.
4-minute internet. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Now I'm initiated.
milestones.
I really
Yeah.
think it was because I put the link on the Arca Discord server.
Probably someone was jealous that we had a show. Like, nah.
Yeah, probably someone was like, "Oh, they look like they're having too much fun. Let's
We did
fuck
a
it
bit more
up."
fun. Yeah.
Like, it looks
Yeah,
so good. Why?
No.
but to be honest, don't know what they were thinking lah.
Yeah, but I think it
Exactly.
was completely random. Yeah, it's just completely random. It's not like not related to the fact that we had an art exhibition.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I also wanted to touch on something that Tulika mentioned, which was the role that Mama Magnet plays kind of like as an archive as well of sorts. And I was wondering if you could expand on that thought a little more, where that impulse came from, and also how you see Cat World fitting into the oeuvre of Mama Magnet.
Cool. I see like myself as a cultural worker, as a curator. If I'm putting out shows like this for people, my community to enjoy, and if these shows are a response to our current time, then somebody should be recording them so that we can pass this information and knowledge on to other people who want to do this work, so that together as a society we can progress. I know it sounds very loose and airy-fairy, but I feel like things like the DDoS attack, for example, they're going to go up on the website. Like it's it within the, if our magnet serves as an archive of various different public programming in the form of exhibitions or articles or stories, podcasts, whatever medium it may be, physical even, each each thing that is archived, each event that is archived is also exists as a growing archive of its own. So for instance, Cat World also has like an entire timeline to it where people can go see like, okay, the DDoS attack happened, and this is how you deal with it, or you don't, you just have to accept it. It's a fact. If you want to do a show on the internet, little things like that. Yeah. And I just hope to keep putting things up on the website, or but in a very simple way, so that it's really an offering to people who are interested in the work or in doing this kind of work, or just interested in like knowing how artists are responding to living in the current time, because there's really so much going on in the world.
I understand that you guys are working on something as well that's coming up after Cat World will end on 31st December, and after that I understand that another collaboration is on the way, and I was wondering if you guys could tell us more about that, and also like what you guys have up your sleeves.
So okay, again, this collaboration is all it's a journey that the three of us are on from the digital world, and now moving into this hybrid physical digital world. How do we take the experience of slowly coming back into this shaken world a little bit, and where all of us have had our own different experiences and our own ways of connecting with the world in isolation, how we bring it back into the real world, the physical world. So this is an exhibition that will be in January 2021, and it's themed on our relationship with nature. It features same thing, like style, concept, Reza's vision. He's directing this whole thing, and Siah's interaction and participation. But additionally, we have like for Cat World also, sound was very important to us. So this time again, we're working with a collaborator to do the entire sound design for visitors who are going to spend like 20-25 minutes in the exhibition space. Plus we're also working with a set designer, because now we, instead of using pixels to build worlds, we got to use actual materials. So we're getting someone who is an expert. Her name's Tina Feng. Yeah, and we are doing this together.
Much more immersive and
yeah. Did I mention? Yeah. Did I mention AR? I can't remember.
No, you haven't.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then you.
but that's
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think an aspect of it is how do we take what we've learned for Cat World and how do we translate that into, Cat World was about bringing an exhibition online, and how do you not restrict yourselves to what's only possible in the physical world when you do an exhibition online. So likewise, I think for this exhibition we're doing, we're experimenting with augmented reality, and the idea is also the same. How do you do an exhibition offline, and you don't limit yourself to certain boundaries, and you sort of like blur the boundaries between the physical and the digital. Like what sort of augmentations you can bring to that experience, or even layers of experience in the same physical space. So I think that's sort of like one of the points of exploration that we're going through right now.
It's like deconstructing everything that we have in the previously as well, and then rebuilding it again in a physical space. So it's like a collage of everything that we have really learned, and then by putting in a space, and then how to let people actually see the unseen energies on the physical space, and be appreciative of whatever that's around you as well, like that you have now.
Reza Hasni is currently based in Berlin, and his works are a contemporary reflection of our world and its unseen energies. Tulika Ahuja is founder and curator of Mama Magnet, a counterculture consultancy strategizing and producing multimedia art programming about accessible themes. Siah Tiong or Siah runs Screensavers, an interactive and web design studio based in Singapore. The exhibition we've been talking about is titled Center for Altered Togetherness, or Cat World for short. It can be viewed at www.c-a-t.world until the 31st of December 2020. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. We had a lot of fun with this conversation, and I hope you've enjoyed tuning in. You can find more articles and transcripts from these podcast episodes on our website, www.objectlessons.space. We also have a presence on all the usual social media platforms, including Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you like our work, we do have a Patreon page that you can check out as well. Mushroomed is a podcast series hosted by Object Lessons Space and produced in collaboration